Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Think Future. Once again, we're coming at you live from deep in the heart of Silicon Valley, California. We're talking innovation, startups, the future. Not necessarily those, and not necessarily in that order. If you're watching on YouTube, smack that subscribe button and hit that bell so you'll be notified when a new show comes online. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast service, please subscribe and please drop a note on Apple Podcasts. I greatly appreciate it. Let me know what you think of the show. So, I won't talk about this one. I'll go to the next topic. I was listening to Robert, what's his name? Name escapes me for a moment. The guy wrote Robert Greene, wrote the Laws of Human Nature, Mastery. He wrote a ton of great books, and I highly recommend Robert Greene. Any of his books are great Christmas gifts as well. And he was talking about being unconventional. I think I was listening to the 33 Strategies of War, and he was talking about unconventionality. And whether it's business, whether it's war or business or any of these other things, he was talking about how important it was to be unconventional. And how important it was that unconventionality differentiated you from the crowd. Because it's so easy to be unconventional. It's so easy to just march with everybody else. But it's much more difficult to be unconventional. And I was listening to this and I'm thinking, yes, you have a point. Sure. It's important to be unconventional. It's important to stick out. It's important to do something different. But you can't be too different. You can't be too strange. You can't be too unconventional. Because once people act too unconventionally, you're immediately tuned out. You're immediately on the outside. You're immediately doing something different. So it's almost like the Overton window. So if you're familiar with the Overton window, it's the window of things that are socially acceptable to be done. Right? There's things that are socially acceptable to be done. And then when you want to create things that are unconventional, you can create things that are way outside of the Overton window. Or you can do things that are slightly outside of the Overton window, things that are slightly unconventional, right? So, for example, something that is slightly unconventional would be to take beef molecules and turn them into steak. So, regrow your own beef. So, instead of having to have cows for beef, you regrow your own beef in a lab. So, you have lab beef. Now, some people would hear about lab beef and say to themselves, oh my God, I'd never try that. That is so unconventional. And other people are like, well, you know what? If it helps the environment and reduces the methane in the atmosphere, and maybe I'll give it a try, and maybe it'll be okay. And maybe this is the start of a new sustainability thing that would be great for the planet. But something like that is a little bit outside the Overton window. It's inside the window for some, and it's outside the window for others. We haven't really once it becomes fully available for everybody, then maybe it'll start moving closer, or the window will start expanding to make it more okay for people to eat engineered meat. Because if you think about it, it's definitely engineered. It's not non-GMO. This stuff is GMO up the yin-yang, right? It is engineered meat. Human beings are engineering meat. And some people were like, I'm not going to touch that. And others are like, well, maybe okay, maybe I will. It's the same story with the guy who didn't shower for 12 years but created a bacterial spray. He would spray himself with this bacterial spray which would eat all the dirt on his body. And he hadn't washed himself. He hadn't showered in 12 years. And some people hear about that and they go, oh my God, this guy must smell awful. He must be rank. And other people are like, well, he's not bad. It's not bad. That's a great idea because we can reduce the amount of water that we use. Because if you think about how much water you use to shower nowadays, especially here in California where we have droughts every stinking year now. Wouldn't it be great if we just had a spray? We could spray ourselves with some spray, and obviously this guy's spray is somewhat effective, but it's not 100% effective. Wouldn't it be great if we could just spray ourselves with some spray, and instead of washing ourselves with all this water, think about how much water we could save if we just used a spray. And again, this is one of those things that's on the edge of the Overton window. Some people would say, that's not a bad idea, I'll try it. And others are like, oh my God, gross. Oh my God, gross. So forgot where I was going with that. So the unconventionality. So if you are trying to be unconventional, if you're using an unconventional strategy or unconventional tactic, and the thing is that because of the way history is written by the victors. So when you see an unconventional tactic being used and it works, then that tactic will be repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated, and everyone goes, oh, you have to try this because it worked. Of course, nobody says that it worked in that specific situation and that specific time frame with those specific people, and that people forget about these things. It's kind of like I was saying about success literature, is that you can't look at success literature and say, yeah, I'm going to try all the same things that this successful person X did and be as successful person X, because those were things that happened to that person in that specific time and place. That will never happen again. Those circumstances will never reoccur. You know, this is exactly why nobody can predict the stock market. Nobody can come out and say, well, all these things are happening, so there's a good chance that this will happen. No. Past performance has nothing to do with current or future results. Nothing. Because those were completely different realities. And I've talked about that at length. So the thing about it being unconventional is that you can be unconventional, but you have to be unconventional, but not too far out of the Overton window. Because then everybody turns their back on you. So when you need to be unconventional, because I've done stuff like this. I've done stuff where people say, okay, you know what? Everything's on the table. We're trying to build patentable ideas. We're trying to create patentable ideas. We're trying to create future patentable ideas. And we're okay with anything. We want to see everything that's on the table. So we go out there, and as a futurist, I come up with ideas that are really far out. Some of them are really far out. Some of them are so far out of the Overton window, you could say that they're very unconventional, extremely unconventional. In fact, I've had some people feedback saying, well, we can't do that because it would destroy our entire industry. Of course, they don't realize that that's a good thing, but like I said, it's an unconventional idea, but it's too far out of the window of conventionality. And this is what we as startup founders really have to concern ourselves with, is that if we try to do things that are unconventional, but are too unconventional, then we risk not being able to build a business at all and nobody is interested in. So we need to build something that's semi-conventional or unconventional to a certain degree, but not too unconventional, because then it's just too far out and we can't educate our individuals. Like I said in the last show, differences between the ethics software and selling pickles. Selling pickles, incredibly conventional. Ethics software, slightly unconventional, but probably too unconventional for a mass market. So you see what I'm saying? It all comes back down to your market. Who are you selling to? Who is buying what you're producing? It's the number one reason why startups fail, is that it's the product. You didn't look at your customers. You didn't define your customers and even ask your customers, would this work for you? Would you pay for it? And even if it's unconventional, they would. I mean, look at something like Uber. Uber was unconventional. The concept of people using their own cars to ferry people around, that was pretty unconventional. But you know what? It was a taxi service. People could take this unconventional idea and connect it with a conventional idea. So once you take an unconventional idea and connect it to the conventional idea and get them to understand, oh, this is a very similar thing to that, but it's just done in a different way. Maybe that's the secret. When you're coming up with an unconventional idea, that you have to connect it with a conventional idea and make that connection, get that understanding happening before you can build your business. So you can be unconventional, and you should be unconventional. But if you're too unconventional, then your business will probably fail, unless you connect it to a very conventional idea. That's it for me for today. See you next time, and until then, don't forget to think future.